I was sitting in Luna's Café, a cozy little spot I frequented with my wife Sarah and her son Alex. The cafe had that comforting, rustic charm that made you forget the world outside. It was a rare moment of normalcy in the middle of my hectic life. Alex had just turned 17, and while I tried to be a good stepfather to him, it still felt like we were working our way toward a solid relationship. Sarah and I had been married for 3 years now, and I thought I'd found my place in her world, until that day. We were seated in our usual corner booth, the three of us sharing an easy conversation over coffee and a light lunch. Sarah was as beautiful as always, her warm smile never failing to make my heart skip a beat. Alex, buried in his phone as usual, looked up only when Sarah called his name to ask about school. It was a quiet, peaceful afternoon, a far cry from the storm that would hit in a matter of hours. It was during one of those brief, comfortable silences that it happened. A man who looked to be in his mid-50s approached our table and slid into the seat across from me without a word. He was dressed in a beige trench coat, a look that might have been classic, but to me it felt off, too deliberate, too out of place in a cafe like this. There was something about him that made my skin crawl, something hidden in the way his eyes seemed to flicker between calm and urgency. For a moment, I thought he was someone Sarah knew, but she didn't react like she recognized him. In fact, she seemed oblivious, her attention still focused on Alex. Without offering an introduction, the man placed a small black box on the table in front of me. It was no bigger than a jewelry case. Nothing about it stood out, but it felt heavy, like it carried a weight far beyond its size. "You'll need this tonight," he said, his voice steady and calm, yet the words hit me like a cold gust of wind. I glanced at him, caught off guard, unsure how to respond. He didn't wait for my reaction. "Don't open it until you're alone," he added, his eyes locking onto mine for a brief moment that felt too long, too intense. Then, just as quickly as he'd appeared, he stood up, turned, and walked away, blending into the lunch crowd without another glance. My mind raced. What the hell had just happened? I looked at Sarah and Alex, both of them completely unaware, still wrapped up in their own conversation. I felt a momentary urge to run after the man, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Something about his presence, his quiet certainty, made me hesitate. Was this some kind of joke? A prank? But the longer I thought about it, the less it felt like a joke. It was too strange, too out of place for anything to make sense. I quickly stuffed the black box into my messenger bag, hoping nobody noticed. Sarah and Alex excused themselves to the bathroom, and for the first time that afternoon, I felt completely alone in the crowded cafe. The box sat in my bag, its shape pressing against me like a reminder that something had changed. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was inside, it was meant for me, and it was something I wouldn't be able to ignore. Sarah returned, her laugh carrying through the cafe as she made her way back to the booth. It felt like the world had resumed its natural rhythm, but I couldn't shake the unease that clung to me. She slid back into the seat beside me, her eyes searching my face. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice soft like she could sense my distraction. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just got a work email. Nothing to worry about." But it wasn't nothing. Whatever was in that box was far from nothing. I just didn't know what it was yet. And as we finished our meal and headed back to the car, the strange warning still echoed in my mind. "You'll need this tonight." I had no idea what that meant, but I had the sinking feeling that by the end of the day, I would. By the time I got home, the sense of unease hadn't left me. It had only grown. The day had gone on like normal, Sarah and Alex heading back to their house after lunch, while I drove back to my apartment, a place I still kept for some semblance of privacy. It was something I hadn't shared with Sarah, but I'd kept it for my own peace of mind. There were things I still needed to sort out in my life, and some part of me wanted to keep that corner of solitude. But tonight, that space felt more like a cage than a refuge. As I walked into my apartment, the first thing I did was throw my keys onto the table and take a deep breath. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you question your own thoughts. I dropped my bag on the couch, then sat down at the kitchen table. The black box was still there, hidden inside my bag, its weight more oppressive than before. What the hell had that man meant? Why had he given me something so cryptic? I reached into my bag and pulled out the box. It was just as unremarkable as before, but now it felt different, as if it were pulling me in, daring me to find out what was inside. I hesitated for only a moment before I clicked open the latch, the faint sound echoing in the silent room. The lid lifted slowly, revealing the contents: a USB drive, a small key, and a folded piece of paper. My heart raced as I took the note first, unfolding it carefully. John, my name is Adam Mitchell. I was Sarah's first husband. If you're reading this, I'm either dead or they've made everyone believe I am. The USB contains proof of everything. The key is to a storage unit at Secure Safe Storage, Unit 215. There's more information there. And listen carefully. Sarah plans to kill you tonight. She's done it before. I failed to stop her. Don't make my mistake. Get out while you can. She can't know you have this. I blinked, reading the note again, disbelief settling like a stone in my stomach. Adam Mitchell, Sarah's first husband. I'd never heard of him, outside of passing mention when Sarah talked about her past. She'd told me that he had died in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving her to rebuild her life with Alex. But now, I was reading words that shattered that version of the past completely. If this note was true, I had married a woman who had killed before and was about to kill again. The realization hit me harder than I expected. I felt cold, as if someone had flipped a switch inside me, and everything I thought I knew had turned upside down. I quickly grabbed the USB drive and plugged it into my laptop. The files appeared almost immediately, and I clicked on the first folder: medical records. I scrolled through them, my stomach churning as I saw diagnosis after diagnosis: borderline personality disorder, antisocial behavior, manipulative tendencies. But the next folder was worse. Photos. Dozens of them. Sarah meeting with various men in different places. Some I recognized, others I didn't. And then the bank statements. Large transfers from joint accounts into her own accounts, money moving around with no clear explanation. It made no sense. Why would she do that? What did it mean? I opened the third folder. This one was labeled investigation reports. The private detective Adam had hired had been busy. There were reports on Sarah's previous husbands. 2 men, both of whom had died under strange circumstances. One died in a fire in 2008. The other, a fall down the stairs in 2012. Both had been ruled accidents, but Adam's investigator had clearly suspected foul play. And now, according to this, I was the third in a string of victims. I felt my hands shake as I read the final document, a letter from Adam written just 6 months ago. It confirmed that Adam had faked his own death to escape Sarah and had been in hiding ever since, waiting to expose her before she could kill him for real. His final words were the most chilling. "She will kill you tonight, John. Don't trust her." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Every belief I'd held about Sarah, about our life together, was now in question. I looked at the clock on my phone. It was 6:30 p.m. The dinner we'd planned to have tonight, the one I'd promised Sarah we'd share together, was just a few hours away. According to Adam's note, Sarah had already planned my death, and it was going to happen tonight. The thought of it was suffocating. I stood up, pacing the room. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with the weight of what I had just uncovered. My mind raced. What was I supposed to do? Who could I trust? How could I warn Sarah without making her suspicious? My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. I looked down at the screen. It was Sarah. "Hey, love," her voice rang through the speaker. "I'm making lasagna tonight. Alex is helping me with the salad. Can't wait to see you." I forced a smile, but it felt hollow. "Sounds great. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. "Perfect," she replied, her voice full of warmth, completely unaware of the storm I was now facing. "See you soon?" I ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at the black box on the table. I knew I had no choice. I had to go. I had to confront her with what I knew. Tonight would be the night that everything changed. But the question was, would I survive it? I left my apartment with a heavy heart, the weight of the discovery still sitting like a rock in my chest. I drove the familiar route to Sarah's house, the streets lined with dimly lit houses that seemed to blur together in my mind. The world around me was moving in slow motion, my mind racing through every detail of the files I had just seen. The photos of Sarah with those men, the money transfers, The way she had covered her tracks, making everything seem like accidents. The whole time I was with her, I had been blind to the reality of what she was capable of. Now, I was staring down the barrel of the truth. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked just as it always did, welcoming, warm, and normal. I could hear Sarah's voice drifting through the windows as she and Alex set the table inside. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The calm before the storm. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the front door. How could I confront her? How could I possibly accuse the woman I had married of murder? My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my thoughts fighting for control. But I knew deep down, I had no choice. I had to face her. I couldn't run, not when I had this much at stake. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked to the front door. My steps felt heavy as if the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Sarah opened the door before I even had the chance to knock. Her smile bright and warm. "Hey, love," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Dinner's almost ready. Alex is just finishing up with the salad. You're just in time." I nodded, forcing a smile, but it felt like my face wasn't my own. "Smells great," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my ears. "Come on in," Sarah said, walking ahead of me into the kitchen. The familiar smell of garlic and basil filled the air, mixing with the sound of utensils clinking against plates. Alex was setting the table, his attention fully on his phone as usual. It felt surreal, like a scene from another life. As Sarah turned to check the oven, I took a deep breath. I couldn't keep this up. I couldn't pretend everything was normal. I had to do it now, before I lost my nerve. "Sarah," I said, my voice low but steady. She turned to face me, her smile still in place. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered slightly, but she quickly recovered. "What's wrong, John? You look a little off." I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I really saw her. The woman I had married, the one I thought I knew, was standing right in front of me. But the truth was, I didn't know her at all. She was a stranger, someone I had trusted with everything, and now that trust was shattered. "I know about Adam," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Her face went completely blank. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me. It was like she was processing what I had just said, trying to figure out how much I knew. The silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she spoke. "Adam? What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice just a little too calm. "I know he's alive," I said. "I know he faked his death. I know what you did to him, Sarah, and I know what you did to the others." She didn't flinch. Instead, she took a slow step toward me, her eyes narrowing slightly, like she was sizing me up. Her calmness was unsettling. I had expected her to be defensive, maybe even angry, but she wasn't. She was calculating. Cold. "You're wrong," she said softly. "You've been fed lies, John. Adam was a man who couldn't let go of the past. He couldn't accept that I moved on, that I found happiness with you." "No," I said, shaking my head. "This isn't just about Adam. This is about everything. The deaths, the lies. You've been doing this for years, Sarah. You manipulated everyone. Nathan, Thomas, now me." At the mention of their names, her expression didn't change. But I saw it. A flicker in her eyes, something just below the surface, barely contained. That was when I knew. I knew I was right. She had done it, and she had planned to do it again, to me. "You think you know everything," she said, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "But you don't. You never did." I took a step back, my heart racing. The intensity in her voice made my blood run cold. "I don't know you," I whispered. "Of course you don't," she replied, her voice low and smooth. "Nobody ever does. But you will, soon enough." My mind raced, trying to process what was happening. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and one wrong step could send me plummeting into the abyss. I couldn't let her control the conversation. I had to take charge. I had to make sure she knew that I wasn't going to be her next victim. "I know about the basement," I said, my voice firm now. "I know what you've planned, and I'm not going down there." She froze, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't say anything. The silence between us was suffocating. I could hear Alex moving around upstairs, oblivious to the conversation happening just a few feet away. But I knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before Sarah would try to push me down those stairs, just like she had with the others. "I'm not the man you think I am, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline. "And I'm not going to let you kill me." She stepped closer to me, her lips curling into a thin, calculated smile. "We'll see about that," she whispered. And for the first time, I understood the depth of the danger I was in. The woman I loved had become a predator, and I was her next prey. The tension in the air was suffocating, the weight of Sarah's words lingering long after she'd spoken them. I felt like I was trapped inside a nightmare, but this wasn't a dream. This was real, and it was happening right in front of me. I was standing in the kitchen, facing the woman I had loved and trusted, who now seemed like a complete stranger. The walls around me closed in, and for a moment I felt the urge to run, to escape from everything. But I couldn't. I had no choice now. I had to face her, or I wouldn't survive. Sarah's smile hadn't wavered, but there was something in her eyes, something cold and calculating, that made me shiver. She was no longer the woman I had married. She was a predator, and I was her prey. "What are you going to do, John?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. "You think you can stop me? You think you can change the outcome of what's already been set in motion?" I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to focus. I had to stay calm. I had to outsmart her. "I'm not going down there," I said again, my voice firm this time. "I'm not going to be your next victim." She let out a soft laugh, as if my words amused her. "You think you can stop me by standing here and talking? You're just like the others. So sure of yourself until it's too late." My heart raced in my chest, but I didn't back down. "I'm not like them, Sarah. I know what you've done, and I'm going to make sure you can't do it again." She stepped closer, closing the distance between us. Her movements were slow and deliberate, almost as if she was savoring the moment. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, a reminder of the woman I had once known. But there was nothing comforting about it now. She was a monster, disguised in the form of the woman I had married. "You don't know what I'm capable of," she said, her voice soft, almost tender. "You never did." I forced myself to meet her gaze, even as the fear clawed at my insides. "I know enough," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I know you've been manipulating everyone around you for years. I know you've used your charm and your lies to get away with murder, but not this time. Not with me." Her smile faltered for just a moment, but it was enough to show me that I had hit a nerve. She was losing control. I could see it in her eyes. She had always thought she was untouchable, that nobody would ever see through her carefully crafted facade. But I had seen her for who she truly was. "You think you're the first to figure me out?" she spat, her tone turning cold and venomous. "You're just another fool who got in my way. You won't be the last." I took a step back, my mind racing. She was desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. I had to be careful. I had to think. Suddenly, I heard a noise from upstairs. Alex's voice, his laughter, light and carefree, drifted down to us. For a split second, I felt a pang of guilt. He had no idea what was going on, and now he was stuck in the middle of this nightmare. But there was no time to worry about him. He was safe for now. I needed to focus on surviving, on getting out of here alive. "You don't have to do this, Sarah," I said, trying one last time. "You don't have to hurt anyone else. You've already destroyed so many lives. Why keep going?" She tilted her head as if considering my words. Then, with a sudden movement, she reached out and grabbed a knife from the counter. I froze, my body instinctively tensing. The glint of the blade caught the light, and I realized she wasn't just trying to intimidate me anymore. She was ready to finish what she had started. "You've always been so naive, John," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You were never meant to be part of my plan, but now you are, and I'm not going to let you ruin it." Before I could react, I heard a faint buzzing sound, my phone vibrating in my pocket. The sudden noise snapped me out of my trance, and I quickly reached for it, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed a distraction. I needed something to buy me time. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. The message was short, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. "Don't go near the basement. It's a trap. Get out of there now, Adam." I didn't have time to process what the message meant. I had to act. Now. Without thinking, I darted toward the door, but Sarah was faster. She blocked my path, her eyes wild with fury. The knife was raised, and for a moment, I thought I might not make it out alive. But then something inside me clicked. I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let her take my life like she had taken so many others. I charged at her, knocking the knife out of her hand. It clattered to the floor, and I grabbed her by the shoulders, shoving her away from me. She staggered back, shocked by my sudden movement. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. "Stay away from me," I yelled, my voice hoarse with fear and anger. "Stay the hell away from me." I rushed toward the front door, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house with her any longer. I didn't look back as I slammed the door behind me, my mind spinning with adrenaline. I was alive, for now, but I wasn't safe yet. Not until I had the truth. Not until I had exposed Sarah for who she really was. And I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The cold night air hit me as I slammed the door behind me and stumbled out into the front yard. My heart was racing, blood pounding in my ears. I didn't stop to look back at the house. I couldn't. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison, and Sarah, the woman I had married, was the warden. I wasn't sure where I was running, but my feet carried me instinctively down the street, past the familiar houses that now seemed alien to me. My phone was still in my hand, the message from Adam flashing in my mind. "Don't go near the basement. It's a trap. Get out of there now, Adam." That message had saved me. But the danger wasn't over. Sarah was still inside that house, and she wasn't going to let me go that easily. She would come after me. She would come after me, and she would do whatever it took to silence me. I kept moving, my breath sharp in the cold air, trying to keep the panic at bay. I needed to think. I needed to call the police. My phone buzzed again, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, expecting another message from Adam, but it wasn't. It was Sarah. "You don't get to walk away from this, John. Not now, not ever. You'll regret this." I felt a wave of fear crash over me, but I forced myself to swallow it. I couldn't let her intimidate me anymore. I had the proof. I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I stopped walking and took a deep breath, my hand trembling as I dialed 911. My finger hovered over the call button for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Was this really happening? Was I really about to call the police on my wife, the woman I had loved? But then I remembered the look in her eyes, the coldness, the calculation. I remembered the files on the USB, the pictures of her with those other men, the evidence of her murders. She was a killer, and I wasn't going to be her next victim. I hit the call button. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, I said, my voice shaky. "I need police assistance. My wife, she's tried to kill me. She's killed before. Please, you have to help me." I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice on the other end, asking for my address, asking for details. But it felt like everything was happening in a blur. I answered her questions as quickly as I could, my mind still racing, still trying to process everything. The police were on their way, but how long would it take? How much longer did I have before Sarah realized I was gone and came after me? I ended the call and looked around, trying to get my bearings. I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to go to a friend's house, not with Sarah knowing where I was. I didn't want to be anywhere near the place that had once been my home. I couldn't go back there. I turned and started walking again, not really sure where I was headed, just trying to put distance between myself and Sarah. The city seemed eerily quiet, the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. It felt like everything had changed in an instant. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted, had turned out to be a monster. And now I was running for my life. As I walked, I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for another message, another call, but nothing came. The silence felt almost suffocating. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't have to look at the screen to know it was her. I opened the message anyway. "You think you can get away? You'll regret this. I won't stop until you're dead." I stopped in my tracks. My stomach churned. She meant it. She wasn't bluffing. I forced myself to keep moving, my steps quickening as the reality of my situation sank in. This wasn't just a fight for my life anymore. It was a fight for my survival, a fight I couldn't afford to lose. I had to get away from her. I had to expose her before she could finish what she'd started. I reached for my phone again and called Adam's number. It rang a few times before he picked up, his voice coming through the speaker, a little shaky but steady. "John?" he said, his voice low, but there was relief in it. "You're okay?" "I'm alive, for now," I said, my voice hoarse, "but I don't know how much longer I'll be." I explained as quickly as I could, recounting what had just happened, how I had confronted Sarah, how I had run, how I had called the police. Adam was silent for a moment, as if processing everything. "You need to get out of there," he said finally. "Sarah won't stop. She never does. But you've got the proof now. You've got the USB. You've got the evidence. You just need to stay alive long enough for the police to get there." "I'm not going back," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done being her victim. I'm going to make sure she never hurts anyone else again." "Good," Adam replied. "Stay safe. Don't trust anyone right now. And whatever you do, don't let her get close again." I ended the call, my resolve hardening. I wasn't going to let Sarah win. She had already taken so much from me, but I wasn't going to let her take my life. I had a plan now, and no matter what, I was going to see it through. The night seemed to stretch on forever as I continued to walk through the empty streets, my phone still clutched tightly in my hand. Every shadow, every flicker of movement made my heart skip a beat. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was out there, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. The weight of the situation was starting to settle heavily on me. I had done what I could. I had called the police. I had run. But none of that mattered until they arrived. And until then, I was alone. I knew I couldn't keep walking around aimlessly forever. I needed to get somewhere safe, somewhere Sarah couldn't reach me. But the question was, where? The streets felt like a maze, each turn leading me further into the unknown. I couldn't go to a friend's house. Sarah knew everyone I was close to, and if she found me, she'd use them to get to me. I couldn't go back to my apartment either. That was the first place she'd look. I needed to get off the street. I needed to disappear. I made the decision then. I would head toward the old storage facility on the edge of town. It was a long shot, but it was isolated, away from the prying eyes of the city. I could find a place to hide until the police arrived, and hopefully, when they did, they would have enough to take Sarah down once and for all. The walk to the storage facility felt like an eternity. My thoughts were consumed with everything that had happened. My confrontation with Sarah, the discovery of her crimes, the haunting realization that the woman I had trusted for so long was a murderer. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, calm, cold, and unfeeling. But I couldn't let myself get distracted. I couldn't let myself think about her, not when I had to stay focused on surviving. When I finally reached the storage facility, I hesitated for only a moment before I pushed open the rusted gate and stepped inside. The area was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the streetlights in the distance. The rows of storage units loomed like silent sentinels in the dark, each one just as anonymous and empty as the last. I walked further into the facility, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It felt eerie, like I was trespassing in a place where time had forgotten to move. But I had no choice. I reached the unit I was looking for, Unit 215. Adam had mentioned it in his note, and while I didn't know exactly what was inside, I had to believe that whatever was there would help me. I fumbled with the small key that had come with the black box, my fingers trembling in the cold, and finally managed to unlock the door. It creaked open, revealing a small, dusty room filled with boxes, old furniture, and the faint smell of mildew. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning the dimly lit room. The contents were unremarkable, nothing that seemed to stand out as important. But I was desperate. I needed to find something that would give me an edge, something to turn the tide in my favor. I walked to the back of the unit, pushing aside a few boxes. Then I saw it. At the very back, tucked behind a stack of old magazines, was a large, locked briefcase. My heart raced. This had to be it. This had to be the thing Adam had left for me. I pulled it from its hiding place and set it on the floor. There was no key, but the lock looked simple enough. I grabbed a nearby tool and pried it open, the metal groaning in protest as I worked. The briefcase finally gave way, and when it opened, I was met with the sight of a thick file, documents, photos, and a few other items that I couldn't quite make out in the low light. I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanning the documents quickly, and then it hit me. The proof I had been looking for. Adam had kept meticulous records of everything. There were copies of Sarah's past marriages, her life insurance policies, and even more incriminating photos of her meeting with various men, just like the ones on the USB. But the real kicker was the last set of documents, an official statement from the insurance company detailing the payouts from the life insurance policies Sarah had taken out on her previous husbands. The evidence was irrefutable. I sat down on the floor of the storage unit, clutching the papers in my hands. This was it. This was what would bring Sarah down. It wasn't just hearsay or circumstantial evidence. This was concrete proof of her crimes. I felt a sense of vindication wash over me, but it was short-lived. The weight of the situation still hung heavily over me. Sarah wouldn't give up easily. She would try to silence me, and I wasn't sure how much time I had before she found me. I stood up and shoved the documents into my bag, securing them as best I could. I didn't feel safe here anymore. The storage unit had served its purpose, but I couldn't stay. I needed to get back to the main road and figure out my next move. I had to get this evidence to the police, and I had to do it before Sarah found me. As I made my way back to the gate, I couldn't help but wonder if I was already too late. Would the police arrive in time? Would I make it out of this alive? The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't stop now. I had to keep moving. I had to stay one step ahead of her, no matter the cost. The walk back from the storage facility was a blur. My mind was consumed with the weight of the documents I had just found, concrete proof of Sarah's crimes. I couldn't help but think that I had finally gained the upper hand, that everything would be over soon. But even as I clutched the file in my bag, the fear gnawed at me. Sarah wouldn't go down without a fight, and I wasn't sure I could survive that fight. I kept my head down as I moved through the streets, trying not to draw attention to myself. The quiet of the night was oppressive, every shadow and flicker of movement making my heart race. The weight of the evidence in my bag seemed to grow heavier with each step I took. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew. How could I have been so blind? How had I missed the signs? The lies. The manipulation. As I turned a corner, I paused for a moment to catch my breath, leaning against a brick wall. My hands were clammy, my pulse thundering in my ears. I pulled my phone from my pocket, considering calling Adam again, asking for his advice, for reassurance that I wasn't overreacting. But I hesitated. No, I couldn't keep relying on him. This was my fight now. I had to finish it on my own. I started walking again, my steps quicker now, more determined. I had to get to the police. I had to make sure that Sarah would never hurt anyone else. But as I moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I glanced over my shoulder, but the street was empty. Still, the feeling didn't go away. It felt like the whole world had turned against me, like I was being hunted. I picked up the pace, crossing the street without waiting for the light. I was almost there, just a few more blocks until I reached the police station. And then the phone in my pocket buzzed again. This time, my heart skipped a beat. I took it out. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the message on the screen. "I know what you did, John. You can't hide from me. You never will." My fingers trembled as I read the words. Sarah. She had found me. She knew where I was. My pulse raced. I looked around, but the street seemed as empty as ever. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was out there, watching me, closing in. I quickly typed a reply, my fingers fumbling in the dim light. "You won't get away with this. The police are on their way. I have everything." I pressed send and shoved the phone back into my pocket, my eyes scanning the street now, every step feeling like it could be my last. I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. The police were my only hope, and they had to get there before Sarah did. The seconds felt like hours. Every car that passed seemed to drive too close, every pedestrian too interested in me. I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders, like I was carrying the evidence of my survival with me. And every step forward was a step closer to freedom, or to death. As I neared the police station, the door loomed in front of me like a beacon of hope. I could see the lights through the glass, the faint silhouettes of officers at their desks, unaware of the danger that was just around the corner. I reached for the door, my hand shaking as I grasped the handle. But then, as if the universe itself was conspiring against me, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I froze. My blood ran cold. I turned just in time to see a shadow move toward me, a figure dressed in black, their face obscured by a hood. I didn't need to see who it was to know that it was Sarah. My heart slammed in my chest. She was here. She had found me. Before I could react, she was right in front of me, blocking my path. Her eyes were cold, like nothing I had ever seen before. There was no trace of the woman I had once loved, just a predator, eyes locked onto her prey. "You think you can run, John?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "You think you can expose me and walk away?" I backed away instinctively, my heart racing. My hands went to my bag, feeling for the file, for the evidence that would save me. But Sarah was faster. She grabbed my wrist, her grip like iron, and I could see the smug satisfaction in her eyes. "You won't get away with this," I spat, trying to pull free. "You won't hurt anyone else." Sarah smiled, a cruel, almost pitying smile. "You really think you can stop me? I've done this before, John. I've always won." My chest tightened. She was right. She had always won. But tonight, this time, I couldn't let her win. I couldn't. I had to stop her. With every ounce of strength I had, I wrenched my arm free from her grasp and turned to run. But as I bolted toward the door, I heard her laugh behind me, a cold, empty laugh that echoed in the night. The sound of her footsteps followed, and I knew I couldn't outrun her forever. I had to get inside. I had to make it to the police before it was too late. Just as I reached the door, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. I pushed the door open, stumbling inside as I prayed that the police would be there in time. The moment I crossed the threshold, I turned to look back. Sarah was standing at the door, her eyes fixed on me, the fury in them clear. But just as quickly as she had appeared, the sirens drowned her out. The police were here. And this time, she wasn't going to get away. I had made it. Life can be unpredictable, and people are often not who they appear to be. Trust is important, but it's essential to remain cautious and aware of the potential for deception, even from those closest to us. Always question the narrative you're told and seek the truth, no matter how difficult it may be. Protect yourself by setting boundaries and being proactive in safeguarding your well-being. When faced with adversity, remember that survival sometimes requires difficult decisions. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to walk away from situations that don't align with your values or safety.